Everybody, I wanted to come back and do a video on the CARES Act that just passed yesterday. So it passed the House yesterday. The president signed it into law. Therefore, things are starting to shape up fairly quickly. And there's quite a bit of information out there for consumers as well as small businesses. Let me tell you up front, though, kind of spoiler alert, if you're a small business owner, I am not going into the specifics on small businesses. I really just want to point you to your local SBA, your Small Business Administration, or your Chamber of Commerce and get the details from that. But I will be talking about what's going to happen in your personal wallet and how that's going to affect you. So hang with me and let's go through it. Okay, starting off, the number one thing that I think everybody has heard about and is maybe a little bit confused about is this idea of a recovery rebate. What is it? How much is it? Do I get it? Etc. So let's just start off by saying if you filed taxes in 2018 or 19, and we'll get to the exceptions in just a second, but if you filed taxes in 18 or 19, you will receive $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for married couples, or $500 per child under the age of 17. It's going to be sent direct deposit if you received your refund, direct deposit, or mailed to you. So there's a caution here that you should be looking into. If you recently moved, you should fill out a form on the IRS website to make sure that you get the check if you don't already have direct deposit. So that would apply for anybody that's moved within the last year. Make sure the IRS knows where your address is if you want the hard copy check. If not, make sure they have your bank information and that is up to date because that's where the money is going to go to. There are a couple of exceptions. So I said $1,200 for individuals. If you make $75,000 or more as a single person filing singly, no dependents, you will not receive the $1,200. So $75,000 or more, there is a phase out for that. $150,000, and I want to just state on a phase out, what it is it's reduced over a period of time. So it starts at $75,000. You can receive a small amount of that. If you're just making like $76,000, you'll receive a reduced amount of that up to a specific amount. But this is where our phase outs start. So just kind of knowing that. If you're married filing jointly, it's $150,000. And if you are head of household, it's $112,000. So, a couple of thoughts on this. If you had an awesome 2019, we actually found that we made a lot more in 2019 than we did in 2018. The best idea on that, if you haven't already filed, is just hold off. That way you aren't phased out, you still get the full amount, and then you can go ahead and file those 2019 taxes by July, because remember that date was pushed back earlier under some other stipulations earlier this month. So that's one tax planning idea. If you did not do well in 2019, but you made a lot of money in 2018, you'll want to get your taxes filed right away. That's important. In terms of having children, there's been a lot of questions on how much do I get for my child. So the stipulation is $500 per child under the age of 17. So let's take a few examples. If you have a child that is in college, let's say 22, and you're still claiming them as a dependent on your taxes, you will not receive the $500 for that child. Now, if the child is claiming their own taxes, so if they're single, filing singly, they're on their own, you do not claim them as a dependent, then they will receive the $1,200, but they have to be filing on their own for that. If you have even a senior in high school who is 18 and still lives in your household and you still claim them as a dependent, you will not receive the $500 for that child. So just a couple of things to note on that. It is a refundable tax credit on 2020 taxes. So going back to if you did really great in 2018, you're going to be phased out. 2019, you did really well and you're going to be phased out. But this year, 2020, you lost your job. It is a refundable credit. So what you'll want to do in 2020 is when you file and your income has substantially reduced to below those phase out limits, you will receive that money. Now, the downside is you're not going to receive it till you file taxes for next year, so it doesn't get in your hands quite as quickly, but you can still receive that money if you lost your job this year. The other thought on this too is Social Security recipients. So if you get your check, whether it be Social Security disability, Social Security retirement, or other forms of Social Security, many times they don't make enough to even file for taxes. So they don't file, but they still will receive a check. And that will go straight into that direct deposit wherever that Social Security check is currently being sent. So the most important things that you can do right now is making sure that your address on file is correct if you're going to receive a paper check, or your bank account information is correct. Other than that, you don't have to do anything. You don't even have to file your 2019 taxes right now in order to receive this. It's going to be based off of both 2018 and 2019, and it's money in your pocket is not taxable, and it's a way to get the money back in the economy and for you to be able to spend to make ends meet. So that is the purpose of it. Let's take an example. If you are a parent, two-parent household with two children, you could receive up to $3,400 if you aren't phased out and if you have children under age of 17. The one thing to be cautious on, there's a lot of differences in when this will be done. We've heard as early as 3 weeks, which would be mid-April at this point, all the way up into May. I kind of anticipate that it could be late April, possibly early May before you start receiving these. But this is great to have. It's something that you ought to consider and think about what you want to do with that money, or where you're going to need that money to be able to use it for future needs. All right, let's move on to the next thing. There is something called coronavirus distributions from retirement accounts. What this means is that you can now take up to $100,000 out of your retirement account penalty free in 2020. It has to happen this year, and it has to be the vested balance, meaning it has to be the amount that you've put in or that you've vested with your employer that you're able to take out. This can be repaid over 3 years, and you can, in the terms of taxes, it'll still be taxable, but the point of this is it's not going to have that penalty, the early withdrawal penalty, that it so often has in other situations. So you can take up to $100,000. It's still taxable, but it can be spread out over 3 years. And it can be repaid over 3 years as well. So that would also help those that are needing money right away. Now, even though you can do this, I am not saying to do that. In fact, I would put this on the lower end of the list, maybe middle to end of it, in terms of what money you need for right now. The first thing to do is figure out your spending plan, figure out what your needs are. If you've lost your job, figuring out those sources of income or savings that you've had and how to utilize those. Now, it's potentially a better idea than putting everything on your credit card and running those numbers up, but it is something to consider because you are jeopardizing retirement possibly to do this. And just because you can take up to $100,000 doesn't mean you have to or that you should, right? And so it is an opportunity. I would strongly have you consider it with another financial planner, whoever you receive financial planning help from, and really think about retirement loans before just taking them. Just because you can doesn't mean it's always a great idea. All right, on the topic of unemployment compensation. So if you've lost your job, the first thing you'll want to do is file for unemployment. What happened yesterday is there was a big inflection of who can actually apply for unemployment. In the past, it could only be those who actually paid into employment. There are a lot of exempt individuals that don't pay into employment. Because of yesterday's bill, they have opened up those floodgates. You can now, if you're a freelancer, if you're an individual business that doesn't pay into it, if you're a church or a 501c3, there are many, many more opportunities for people to file for unemployment than the strict guidelines they had before. So that would be my first recommendation. If you've lost your job, now unemployment is handled through the states. What the federal government has done is give them an influx of money for the states to be able to divvy out accordingly. So you'll want to go to your state's unemployment website, Google it, it'll pop right up. Make sure you're on your state's website, fill out the forms, and get that in right away. You're also seeing the elimination of the waiting period. This means that the federal government's going to cover, usually in the past, it was about a week before they would get a response and you'd start receiving a check. As of yesterday, the federal government's going to cover that. So whatever that means to your state and however that's handled is going to be on a state-by-state basis. but there is money now to be able to pay for that, so you get cash right away. Unemployment checks, so state unemployment checks can be increased by up to $600 a week for up to 4 months. In some cases, rare cases, this may actually exceed what people are taking in. They're not quite so worried about that. It's a short period, it's 4 months. They are just wanting to get money into people's pockets to be able to survive and make it through however long this pandemic goes on. It also adds an extra 13 weeks to unemployment insurance. Really, the bottom line of this whole thing, if you lost your job, apply immediately. Do whatever you can to go ahead and apply for unemployment. All right, I did mention there's a lot of relief for small businesses in this bill. As a small business owner, I really encourage you to reach out to your local chamber or your local SBA to really get help for that. Let's move on to student loans. So I want to talk here and make sure that you understand before I mention anything else about student loans, we're only talking about federal. If you have consolidated your loans or received private loans, this does not apply to you. So these are only federal student loans that you've received from your school in those direct payments to you. As of right now, all federal student loan interest has been suspended, so you are not going to receive any interest on that for the next 6 months. And here's a big caveat that just happened yesterday. All your federal student loan payments are deferred automatically until September 30th. You do not need to call your contributor. You don't need to call whoever your service provider is and tell them you need it. It will be done automatically. So it's one less thing you need to worry about. There will be no interest accruing during this time. And here's the big caveat. For those of you that are on public student loan forgiveness or other forgiveness programs, it actually still counts towards those programs. So in this case, this year, you're going to get 6 months of literal free payments without having to pay anything. And also one other thing, involuntary debt contributions on federal student loans right now are suspended. So keep in mind, it has to be a federal student loan. It is automatically done. If it is not, of course, call your servicer. Otherwise, you should start seeing those student loan payments stop in April, and they will resume again in October. So this lasts until the end of September. That's huge for a lot of people who are trying to make ends meet and have student loan debt to also pay. So don't worry about that right now if you have federal student loan debt. Finally, there are quite a few changes to HSA, so high deductible savings accounts. HSAs are attached, Archer medical savings accounts, and flexible medical savings accounts. It's a mouthful. All of those have changes to them, meaning that now almost any eligible medication can be over the counter. So if you're going out and buying Tylenol for your fever or whatever that over the counter medicine may be, you can now receive that, run it through your HSA or your MSA or your FSA and receive that as a tax-free product. Also, the interesting thing they included this time is menstrual care products. So women, we finally have been able to receive help for that too. So it would be a tax-free, obviously you put the money into the medical savings account and then you pay for those things and you receive those without paying taxes. The other caveat here too is for those of you with a HSA, so the high deductible healthcare plan that is covered by an HSA, you can now temporarily have the telehealth services covered because so many doctors are now going to telehealth. In the past, this was not eligible, but for right now, you do have that opportunity. So these are some of the big provisions that I thought were the most important for you to know about. I know that many of you were wondering about student loans or unemployment or checks kind of coming through. So I wanted to do a quick video on this. We are looking at putting together another Q&A next week to be able to answer any more of your questions. So shoot questions over to me on Instagram, on Facebook, through my website. But with Chief Financial Mom, we're here to help. We want to help you in real time and make sure that this is something that we're all going to get through. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. Hang in there. Don't give up. Find a friend. Talk to them. Talk about your stresses. And really, at the end of the day, know that you're going to get through this. We're going to make it through. We'll all be stronger because of it. We'll have learned good lessons. But in the meantime, hang in there and bless those of you that are really struggling with this. My heart goes out to you. Thank you to all the medical workers all the doctors, all the truck drivers, all of those of you that are keeping the rest of us safe at home. Appreciate you, and we hope that any of you that can stay home will stay home and that this will end all too soon. We're so glad that you joined us today. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll go over some more things soon. Take care. Have a good weekend.